Topic number 4-3, Factoring Trinomials Day 1. For a review, we're going to look at the blocks and box method and our sums and products. So number 1 is the blocks and box method. For the first question, it's asking us to find our product. In order to find our product, we need to combine any like terms we see. We have like terms across our diagonals, the 3x and the negative 6x. Different signs, subtract to keep the sign of the larger number. So in this case, we would get a negative 3x. So we've got our x squared from 3x and negative 6x, that makes negative 3x, and then the negative 18. In order to find our factors, we have to get our factors along the top and side. To make an x squared, we need an x and an x. X times x, x squared. In order to find the 3x, we need to multiply something by this x to make it 3x. So if I multiply x by positive 3, I get my 3x. If I multiply this x by negative 6, I'll get the negative 6x I need. And then negative 6 times a positive 3 is a negative 18. So we've got x times x, x squared, x times 3, 3x, x times negative 6, negative 6x, and then negative 6 times positive 3 gives us our negative 18. If you notice, we took the coefficients and moved them on out to the left and up here. So 3, and then 3, a negative 6, a negative 6. So in this case, our factors, one factor along the top would be x plus 3. And then we've got another one as x minus 6. For number 2, we're looking at our sums and products. We need to find two expressions that give a sum of negative 5x and a product of negative 50x squared. So let's look. If we have a negative product, that means our two expressions are going to have different signs. One of them is going to have to be positive, one of them is going to have to be negative. They're both going to have x's. One will be positive, one will be negative. Now we can think of factors of 50. If they're different signs, we're going to end up subtracting them. So let's see. We've got 1 and 50. That makes 49. Not what we need. Let's try. We've got 5 and 10. The difference between 5 and 10 is 5, is what we need, but we need a negative 5, so the larger number should be the negative number. In this case, 10 is larger than 5, so it's negative 10x and 5x. Now, if we multiply negative 10x times positive 5x, we get our negative 50x squared. And negative 10x plus 5x gives us the sum of negative 5x. So our two expressions would be 5x and negative 10x. Now we're going to combine these two methods to factor trinomials. Now if you notice, in the blocks and box method we were given 4 terms. Though these terms could be simplified, you'll notice that in number 3 we only have 3 terms. So we can fill in what we know in our box. We know our squared term, which is the x squared, and our c term, which is the 32. But for filling in here, we're going to use the sums and products method. So if we're going to sum up to, we need to sum up to the middle term. In this case, our middle term is 12x. And then we need to find two things that would multiply together. We're going to end up multiplying our x squared term, or our squared term, and our c term, so our constant. In this case, the x squared and the 32. If I multiply 32 times x squared, I'm going to get 32x squared. Our sums and products method will give us two expressions that will add up to 12x, so we'll be able to rewrite this trinomial as a unsimplified trinomial. So we'll get the 12x and we'll break it into two expressions that will multiply out to 32x squared. So since 32 is positive, the 32x squared is positive, that means we need two positive numbers in order to get a positive sum. So let's think of factors of 32. That would add up to 12. Let's see, we've got 8 and 4. If we add up 8 and 4, we get 12, so we've got 8x and 4x. So now we've taken 12x and broken it down into two expressions that would add up to it, and that can be used to fill in our boxes. So we've got an 8x and a 4x. X times x will give me that x squared. Then x times a positive 8 will give me that 8x I need. And then an x times a positive 4 will give me that 4x I need. And then 4 times 8 is a 32. So we've now factored this trinomial using a combination of the blocks and box method and the sums and products method. So the factored form of this trinomial would be x plus 4 times x plus 8. Using the same process on number 4, we're going to fill in what we know. We've got the 2y squared and the positive 6. We want to break down this middle term, so we're going to use the sums and products method. So we need to sum up to our middle term, which is negative 7y, and we need to multiply together the 2y squared and the positive 6. So we've got 2y squared times positive 6 is 12y squared. In this case, we have a positive product but a negative sum. So we're going to have to multiply two negative numbers. If we multiply two negative numbers, we'll get a positive number, but we can still get a negative sum. Since they're going to be the same signs, we're going to end up adding them, so we can think of factors of 12 that will add up to 7. In this case, we've got 3 and 4. But not only 3 and 4, we need the negative 3y and the negative 4y. So they're the two expressions. If we take negative 3y and add to it negative 4y, or if we say negative 3y minus 4y, we're going to get the 7y. That's our middle term. So now we'll take it in, fill it in where we want. So I'm going to put my negative 3y here and my negative 4y here. And this would still work even if we put the negative 4y here and then the negative 3y over here. But I'm filling it in like this. But you can try it and you'll see that you can get the same thing. Now we need to figure out this corner right here. If we can figure out these two terms, then we can fill in what we need. So we're going to get a y squared. So both of them are going to have a y. Y times y gives me that y squared. I also need the 2. Well, if you notice, along here, using our greatest common factoring method that we learned in the blocks and boxes, we've got 2 and 4. So the greatest common factor of 2y squared and 4y is 2y. So we've got the 2y times the y gives me the 2y squared. So what times y would give me negative 3y? That's negative 3. And what times 2y would give me negative 4y? In this case, that would be a negative 2. A negative 2 times a positive 2 gives me that negative 4, and then we've got the y. And then if you notice, negative 2 times negative 3 is the positive 6. So now we've factored this trinomial. So we've got 2y minus 3 as one factor, and then we've got y minus 2 as another factor. Going on to number 5, we've got s squared plus 2s minus 48. So fill in what you know, the s squared and the negative 48. We need to sum to our middle term, in this case is 2s, and need to multiply together to our first squared term times our last c term. So we would get a negative 48 s squared. Since it's going to be a negative product, we're going to need to think of factors that would multiply out to negative 48 and also have a difference of 2, since they're going to have different signs since it's a negative product. I could think of 6 and 8 would multiply out to negative 48. Well, they would multiply out to 48, and 8 minus 6 would be 2. Now we need a 6s and an 8s, but we want our larger expression to be positive. That way when we subtract them, we end up with a positive sum. So we're going to get a positive 8s and a negative 6s. Multiply these together, get the negative 48s squared, add them, we get our middle term. So now we can go ahead and write in a negative 6s and an 8s. S times s will give me s squared. S times negative 6 will give me that negative 6s I need right here. S times positive 8 will give me that 8s I need in here. And then positive 8 times negative 6 gives me that negative 48. So factored form, s plus 8 times s minus 6. If you notice for number 6, we don't have the box drawn out, but we can go ahead and draw it out. And fill in what we know. We know the 3x squared, and then the negative 6. I'll use st for sums to, and mt for multiplies together. Our sums to will be our middle term, which in this case is a negative 7x. Multiplies together is the product of the squared term and the constant term, or the c term. We've got 3x squared times negative 6 makes a negative 18x squared. So if we have a negative product, we're going to have different signs. So a positive and a negative. Now I need to think of two factors of 18 that have a difference of 7. I can think of 9 and 2. If I were to subtract those, they would end up with 7, and I also could multiply them out to 18. But we want a negative sum, so our larger one has to be the negative one. In this case, 9 is larger, so it would be a negative 9x and a positive 2x. So I can fill these in where I need. Got the negative 9x and the positive 2x. So I've got an x times an x will give me that x squared. Now I need the 3. Well, the common factor along this 3x squared and this negative 9x is the 3x. So here's the 3x. 3 times x gives me that 3x squared. So 3x times a negative 3 will give me that negative 9x. 3x times negative 3. And I've got x times a positive 2 will give me this positive 2x. And then 2 times negative 3, negative 6. So now we can write this as factored form. 3x plus 2 times x minus 3. For number 7, if we notice the squared term this time is negative, that doesn't mean our answer is necessarily going to change. We can still use the same method, so go ahead and draw the box. We've got the negative t squared and a positive 70. We've got sums 2, multiplies together 2. So we need to sum up to our middle term, which is negative 3t, and needs to multiply together to negative t squared times 70 would be negative 70t squared. So I need, since they're different signs, I'm going to need two expressions that have a difference of 3. So I can think of 7t and 10t. They have a difference of 3t, but we want a negative 3t, so the larger expression should be negative, which would be a negative 10 and a positive 7. That would give us a negative 70t squared when we multiply them, and a negative 3t when we add them. So I'll fill in where I need. I've got the negative 10t and a positive 7t. T squared can be broken down as t times t, but we need a negative t, so one of these has to be negative. You can pick either one, and you'll see that this works if you pick either one. I'm going to go ahead and make this side t the negative t. Now we've got a negative t times a t, that's the negative t squared. I need to multiply something by negative t to get a negative 10t. Well, if I multiply it by 10, a positive 10 times negative t is negative 10t. Now I need to multiply t by something to get 7t, in this case a positive 7. Positive 7 times positive 10, positive 70. We've had all of our factors, so we can write this as a negative t plus 7 times t plus 10. Or, if you want, you can think of factoring out this negative 1. If we divide this by negative 1 and divide this by negative 1, we can factor out a negative out here, then we get t minus 7 times t plus 10. And you could have distributed that negative 1 to this. You'll see that you would get the same answer regardless. Working on number 8, go ahead and draw your box. We've got the sums to and multiplies to. Let's fill in what we know. We've got our squared term, 6x squared, and then we've got the constant term, which is a positive 5. So I need my sums to, which is my middle term, 17x. I need to find the multiplies to, which is the product of the 6x squared and the 5, which would make a 30x squared. Positive product, positive sum, two positive expressions. I need to think of two expressions that would add up to 17. I can think of 2x and 15x. If I multiply these two together, 2 times 15 is 30, x times x, x squared. 2x plus 15x is 17x. So you can fill these in. We've got the 2x and the 15x. X times x will give me that x squared, but now I need to think of the two coefficients that will give me that 6. x squared that I need. Right here, I can factor out a 2. 2 goes into 2 and also goes into 6. I've already factored out that x, so I've got the 2x. Along here, if you'll notice, we could factor out a 3. 3 goes into 6 and into 15, or if you wanted to, you could have done, oh, well, what times 2x would give me 6x squared? Well, 3x. Now, what times 2x would give me a 2x? If I multiply by 1, that would give me the 2x. And then what times 3x would give me 15x? If I multiply by positive 5, I've got my 15x. Positive 5 times positive 1, positive 5. So in factored form, we could write this as 2x plus 5 times 3x plus 1.